Hi everyone, some of you I don't know, but lovely to see you. Some faces I've seen before, and some of you I do know, unfortunately, but that's the way it runs. I'm Deacy. We're here today to talk about business. When I asked the lovely Sue, well, how's that going to roll, anything more, she goes, just talk about business. It's a wide category. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll just engage in the conversation. Tell you a little bit about myself. Well, I'm a coach using 3 principles, but I call myself a coach. I'm also a martial arts instructor, and I'm an acupuncturist body worker. So my business model is one of, it's what I like to call a portfolio lifestyle. So I don't want to do one thing, I do lots of different things. But from a three principles perspective, I've certainly found that that's infused everything I do. With coaching, it is mainly one-to-one, though I have done a little bit of going into businesses and talking with people, and depending on what you want, I'll share what experience I have in that. And that's really my intro, and over to my beautiful co-host.
My name is Jacquie Forde. I live in Scotland. I am a human being. I know that's difficult for you all to notice. I never ever say I'm a 3 principles coach, because we are the principles. We are the principles in action. Every day, the principles are just a description of how we're actually living our lives, and they're not a prescription for the way that we do life or we live our lives. Like Dawn, my career is a portfolio career. My background is in nursing midwifery. Then I spent about 28 years working in the pharmaceutical industry, doing everything from sales, marketing, business management, and latterly I was doing government affairs. I set up my own businesses about 5 years ago. I have a non-profit organisation called the Wellbeing Alliance, which has changed in form over the years the deeper my understanding of the principles has become, and I can talk about that through this session. And I have a strategic consultancy where I work with blue chip organisations, building public affairs campaigns, building disease awareness campaigns, and I always end up doing some kind of principles work in there as well when they start to see how I work, how I operate. So I'm looking forward to this business session with Dawn, because I think as human beings we often come to the table with a lot of ideas about what business is and what business isn't. And this session is an opportunity for each and all of you to hear what Dawn and I are saying, but also for you to question us on what we've seen. But we're very keen to hear what you're seeing in your current work as well.
Yeah. So, when I first came across the 3 principles, I was really curious as to how this would work in business. Because when I first started out, I was still very much in the model and the doing. And as I got more grounded, a little bit more understanding of the principles, I realised that anywhere there's a human activity, anywhere there's a human endeavour, the principles apply. Now, I'd worked in business for decades. But it was funny, because when I came across the principles, I was kind of outside that world. And I almost saw business people as a separate category of human. You know, it was funny. And then as time went on and grounding, and certainly through my practice and working with people, of course they were coming into it. It's funny because they were coming to me into my clinic, businessmen were coming into my clinic, and we were doing some 3Ps work. But I didn't see the switch that you could go into a business and talk to them there. I just didn't see it. And then the first time I went in and I tried to talk to the business people like it was a doing, like it was a prescription. And can you guess how that went for me? It was an absolute disaster. I was booked for 3 days, I did 1. Suddenly they had other meetings that came up, in other words, get you out the door. But it was great for me because I then had to rethink what I was doing. And the next time I went in just talking to them as people. I did something that I didn't do the first time. When I went in, I listened. I just started engaging, talking, hearing what their problems were. Not that I could solve their problems. I wasn't there as a consultant. See, that was part of the first time I went in. I went in as a consultant. Well, what am I consulting on? So the second time went much better. I'm not saying it was perfect by any means. I did trip over my tongue a few times, and that's unusual for anyone who knows me. But it went a lot better because I listened, and that was what I got out of it. What I've seen in the world of business, and this is something that has hit me in a lot of areas of life, but certainly in the world of business, is business people are great at doing. They're fantastic at it. They have this image, I get up, I do, I'm a business person, all the rest of that. But they don't take time to listen to their colleagues. And even in a sales environment, I've seen where they don't take time to listen to their customers. And if there's one thing the principles bring to us, it's a understanding that if we take time out, give ourselves a bit of silence, and we just listen, sometimes our problems seem to evaporate or solutions present themselves. So when Jacquie started and she said, well, she's a human, get ready for this. Business people are humans too. They have all the same issues we do, the same way of looking at things. What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just ask, how many people in the room actually have their own businesses? And if you keep your hand up, how many of the people in the room who have businesses, are they principles-based businesses? Okay, just thank you. Just curious to know.
Yeah.
I often wonder about these sessions, whether it's worth us prattling on or whether it's worth us just doing question and answer, because that way we get to tell you the stories that you want to hear rather than me prattling on about, what I've seen. Don's already prattled on, but it was nice prattling on. So I would like to invite you now. I would like to invite you all now actually to ask questions, because our job is really to be of service to you, to help you get as much as you want out of this session. And the stories that are in my head will bubble up, and Don's stories will bubble up as well, because my story is very similar to Don's, and you'll probably find it's very similar to everyone's story that's in this room, but there might just be slight nuances that just help you see something else just that wee bit more deeper. And it'll be very sort of poignant for you. So I would just like to extend the invitation, and no question is too dumb and no question is too smart. Dawn.
You've touched on it, but can you just expand a little bit? As my understanding deepens, I can see that principles is everything and applies to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this fixed idea that it's one thing for one set of people and one set for another. Can you just talk about that a bit more, about how you go into, say, a corporate business,
mm-hmm.
or you're going to a hospital or a school, or I sort of understand up here that it's all the same, but to have some examples of how it all.
Like, how would you even pitch? How do you even get a foot in the door?
That sense, really.
Because once you're there, you open your mouth and yes, they're all human beings and they're going to hear something. But how you get in there, what the pitch is.
Okay, my question is, what stops you from getting in there?
I think it's trying to work it out before you get there again, isn't it? It's trying to work it all out because I come from holistic wellbeing background, and clients come in and I don't know what they're going to come in with, and I'm really fine with that.
Mhm.
And I guess it's no different, is it, when you're going out? You don't know what you're going out to. So, but it's, to me, that's a block.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I suppose I'm following on with that. I think the difference is that if somebody's coming to you, they're coming to you because they feel probably that you've got something they want. But if you're sitting in your business somewhere and somebody knocks on the door, why would you let them in?
Okay. I'm going to take you a little step back, first of all, okay? Yeah. For me, I always wait for some kind of inspiration that I'm meant to be doing something. I'm guided that that's what I'm meant to be doing. And recently I worked with a young woman who was a writer, and she was a beautiful writer, but she desperately wanted to work in the corporate sector. But every time she spoke to me about wanting to work in the corporate sector, the look of fear that crossed her face was palpable. It was just so obvious. And I said to her, what are you afraid of? And she says, the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen when I get in to speak to these people. And that's when we start to get faced with separate realities. Some people think the unknown is a scary place. Some people think the unknown is a playground. For me, it's a playground. I'm going in there to cause a bit of mischief. I'm going in there to find out, how are you? What's going on with you? What's your company interested in? What are they not interested in? I don't know how I can be of service to them until I'm actually in the building speaking with them. Most corporate organisations actually have wellbeing programs within their organisation, or a lot of HR directorates have issues with stress, bullying and absenteeism. Principals are a beautiful way to get in and speak about that. So this woman that I was talking to, who had the fear of God about working in businesses, I just said to her, what do you find easy? What is easy for you to do? And she said, what easy for me is to write. And I said, now how can you make a living out of writing? And all of a sudden she started to see how if she created groups of other people who wanted to write, she could earn her living doing her easy. So often I think we try to project ourselves into something that doesn't feel right because we feel that's what we should be doing, rather than doing what feels good for us until we're ready to do whatever it is we're meant to do next. But even if you do want to go in and speak to businesses and you've got this little bit of discomfort, I call it divine discomfort, because I know I'm going to learn something. I may not always like it, but I'm going to learn something when I'm in there. So I'm not afraid of that. I think when you're really, really grounded in this understanding, you know that you've got something to offer anybody. A businessman, sort of at a school, anything, you know with absolute certainty that you're bringing them a message that they've not heard before, or they've not heard it in this way. So you're actually starting from a point of advantage because you have something to share that they don't know yet. So going into a business and just asking the question, who's responsible for well-being? We've read that there are issues in corporations about absenteeism and stress. Tell me about your organisation. And then you'll find out what it is. I know for a fact in politics in Scotland, there's huge issues with stress and bullying within the public sector. It's everywhere in the public sector. But they won't admit it. So I don't talk about stress and well-being in these places. I talk about clarity and performance. But I'm still talking about stress and well-being. I'm just talking about it in a different way. And if you go in and your mind is quiet, and you're listening to understand, not listening to answer, there's a huge difference in that piece. And Dawn mentioned it earlier. When you listen to understand, you have a quiet mind, and the answers bubble up or the questions bubble up in you, to ask that seem pertinent for the people you're in front of. Whereas if you listen to then answer, it's a complete nightmare. I've been there myself, honestly, trying to be windswept and interesting so that people will listen to me. Hello, I know about principles. And what happens is you get so caught up in your own head, you don't actually hear what they're saying. And because you don't hear what they're saying, they don't hear what you're saying, egos get in the way. But if you're there from a lovely, quiet space, they hear you. Does that make sense? I'm a great believer in not doing things that make you feel uncomfortable unless you can't help yourself. You know what that feels like, Don?
No.
There are some things that you just have to do. So you just go and do them. And other things that you have not to do. And it's all in the feeling. I only follow the comfortable feelings unless I can't help myself.
So if I said to you, I cold called and I knocked on the door, I'd be lying. I never done that. The way I went about it, and that's whatever way works for you, was I think if you want to find someone, go where they are. So the way I did it was I went to Chamber of Commerce, I went to local business meetings, I talked to business people I knew. And then I also had an eye, one thing I did was, this chap was going on about talent management, and I'm nodding, didn't have a clue what talent management was. Right? So I looked it up, but what I was doing, I was going in, because he had an employee who was an IT guy, and they were building this system, and he was threatening to go, and he wanted to throw as much as he could to kind of keep him on board. And that's not really my brief, but I thought I'll do it anyway. And the reason why I share that is I was always looking for a hook. I think it's much easier to get into a business if you have an introduction, if you know someone. The way I am right now is I would really not like the cold calling bit, saying hi, I'm Don, I'm here, but I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying for me. And you asked the question about how. So the way I go about it, the way I went about it is, first of all, I've had some clients who've come to who were business people, and they started off for body work, and then it moved on to 3-piece coaching, and then they saw the benefit of it, and they said, oh, can you come in? And I said, oh yeah, definitely. Then going to business meetings, and being very patient, because I've seen, I kind of feel like I'm talking about marketing now, and I hope I'm not, but you asked that question. So you go, you start to talk to people, you get relationships, you start talking to them about their problems. One of the things I saw at these business meetings was everyone's talking about themselves. No one's listening to anyone else. They're all pitching. And that was beautiful for me, because I wasn't there. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So I was just watching and listening and getting to know people, and then building relationships, and then finding out what the problems are in their business. Then talking to them about that and saying, oh, maybe I could help with that. Oh, well, yeah, why don't you talk to Fred and, HR and all the rest of that. And then slowly you start to get conversation. Now, several times that went no further than a conversation. But I would suspect that's because my pattern was wrong. So every time I did it, I learned more and more. And it helped when I went in, because I could, having worked in the business world, you can't go in talking spiritual stuff. You do know that, right? Even though a lot of them are spiritual people, we normally, and again I'm generalising, there is a language of that business. So you've got to be able to speak that language. So it takes time to learn it. I think a lot of, and again, this is my opinion, a lot of people think, well, I've got the 3 Ps, I've got that down, I can now go out and share this with the business world. And theoretically, of course, you can. But as in anything in life, there's a way of learning how to do things. There is a world of form in the business world that you have to learn how to follow, and it takes time. And that was, from me going from one side of the desk to the other, it took me a bit of time to do it. But it was worth doing it. I made mistakes. Oh, did I make mistakes? But that's okay, because you learn from it. And then I found that as I became easier, the conversation became easier, because I was kind of setting the pace of the conversation. Does that make sense to you? Because I think a lot of people say, well, how do I get it? How do I start going into the business world with 3 Ps? Well, my understanding is learn how the business world works.
Yeah, I was more thinking about, I'm already thinking this is a silly question now, is it coming from one, I say I come from the well-being world, is it okay to go into the business world? Is it okay to go into the schools?
Oh, yeah.
It's that.
Look,
because in my head I can see that it all fits wherever.
Businesses will tell you the number one issue for them is stress. It's overtaken back problems by a long shot. Okay, there's lots of studies done now how much certainly British industry is losing to stress. Anything they can find to help that is, I wouldn't go and say, well, but that's what I mean about that. Tag on to what's what they'll understand. And if you say stress, they understand stress. So you use their, absentee management, things like that. And also with injury recovery. Do you understand why that? So say someone has an injury at work and part of them bringing back so they don't get sued or whatever. You can jump in on that. I've had no luck with in-house welfare departments. They don't want to know, because mainly they've already got counsellors, and they've got this. A lot of them have this CBT thing going on, and that they've bought into that, so they don't want to know me. But that's okay. I'll find a way through. I'm persistent. I'll wear them out. But
First question I want to ask you, Don, is who is it that needs approval?
Me, I guess.
Who gives you that approval?
Me. Yeah.
I think, as Don said, find the local language, find out what interests them. Something I did that I just thought was a complete laugh was I created a wellbeing survey, and I sent it to all of the businesses in the area that I worked. And I just said, I'm a local, consultancy. We're interested in the well-being of the businesses around us. And I created 10 questions, and I found out what it was they were interested in. And then I went back in and played their words back to them. And that helped me get started, creating courses and doing things with them in the actual business. So there's a playfulness, and actually I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all your faces, and either Dawn and I are really freaking ugly, or you're all too serious, because you're all looking at us as though we've got the answers of the universe. And I'm sorry, but we are only talking about business.
no, I think we're ugly.
We're
I'll be honest with you, that's where it's going, all right?
we're not talking about the earth is about to end and we've all got 5 minutes to make our life decisions. Business is part of life. We have business transactions happening all the time, every single moment of every single day. But all of a sudden we think, because it's business, it's something deep and serious, and it's not. So treat it that way. It's a playful thing. It's something to have fun with. And if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. But as Dawn said, you'll learn. And then you go into the next call with something new, something different to have a chat about.
And do remember, we're promoting or sharing the principles. We're not sharing ourselves. And if they're not interested, it's no big deal. It's not. The hardest thing for me was when someone said no. I felt it was a rejection of me. And when I talked to this sales guy, and he was a brilliant sales guy, he said, oh no, they're not saying no to you. They're saying no to the product. Got nothing to do with you. They don't even remember your name. First of all, I think they bloody better remember my name. but you know, once you take the impersonal out of it, because the 3 Ps are not personal. Yes, we have a personal experience of them, but they're a universal truth. And that's what we're there to share. The one thing, you know, I can say that in this community of this, you've got to be careful how you say it in the business world, obviously, because that, you know, it sounds a bit cultish and so on and so forth, and that's not how you want to come across. But with us, we see the truth of that. It's not a rejection of me. All I'm trying to do is share the principles. If they're not interested, I'll go somewhere else.
Are there any other questions?
Well, I'm sitting here laughing at myself, really. I used to.
We're laughing at you too.
I used to work in corporate world. Disney, you can't get much more corporate than that. It was Buena Vista. It was the home entertainment section that I was the sales manager for the whole of Ireland, believe it or not. I took that job so freaking seriously. I was stressed out by the time I left 5 years later. But because I'm not a salesperson, I'm useless. I'm crap at sales. I cannot sell anything. But I consistently overhit my targets all the time. Because, well, first of all, it's not hard to sell Disney videos. I mean, everybody's clamoring for them. But second of all, I used to get my targets from head office in the UK, which were freaking ridiculous. Like, they'd say, what did we do on Lion King 2 years ago? Well, we want 25% on that. And you think, Lion King was huge. How are we going, with this crappy thing, how am I going to get 25% more sales?
She just disrespected Simba.
I know, I love Lion King, don't get me wrong. But anyway, so what I used to do with the targets was I'd say, okay, I have these, probably 10 top buying clients. And, I wasn't selling at hall doors or anything. I was selling into Tesco's and Extravision or Blockbuster and all of these things. So I knew all these guys, I had 10 clients, that's all I had. And I'd say, okay, well, this is my target. I need you to take, 50,000. I need you to take 100,000. I need you to take, and fill my target. And they'd say, okay, Liz, okay. And that was it. And still, I came away thinking I was useless at my job because I wasn't actually selling. I wasn't forcing them to take something they didn't want. And I thought that till this second. And I'm sitting here and I think, God, I was freaking fantastic at my job because I didn't actually take the sales bit. I just was honest. I went in. I said, look at this ridiculous target they've given me. Can you help me out? I need you to take this. And they did, because they liked me.
I love that, because you were yourself. Yeah. You weren't trying to be anybody else. And I think often when we get into this place of working in businesses and doing things in business, we think there's a persona, there's a disguise that we have to put on. God knows I wore it for 28 years in the corporate sector, and I didn't know it. And it was one of my friends said, when I left, Jacquie, I don't know how you wore the corporate cloth for so long. And I went, why didn't you tell me 28 years ago? I didn't realise that I had it on. And it's to be aware that we put labels on ourselves consistently that don't apply.
But it's okay to put a label on, so long as you know you're putting the label on.
You're playing with it.
So some of the jobs I've had in the corporate world, you had to be a certain way, and I say that's okay, so long as you know that's what you're doing. It's when you take it home with you. It's when things start to go wrong, you make that all about you, that you get that.
Yeah.
So you're this
sales
guru who doesn't know she's a sales guru.
I don't even know.
You're the reason I bought the Lion King,
Anyone else?
No,
questions or comments?
It was more an observation, something that I'm seeing more clearly quite recently actually, is I used to get caught up in the whole, like I say, the persona. I needed to be a certain way, or I needed to have this snazzy website, or I needed to have this and I needed to have that, and I would use all of that as an excuse not to get started. But it was pointed out to me recently that all you're really having is a conversation. And if you can bring it back to a very simple fact, it's just two people having a conversation. That's changed everything for me. So rather than getting tied up in knots about business has to be a particular way and getting frightened of the word business in and of itself, it's just a conversation. Just a conversation. And when you get it at that level, things might shift for you. It might not. I don't know. But for me, it did. And things are starting to move. And so whether I'm talking to an academic at the University of Oxford who's got the brain the size of several planets, or whether I'm talking to the cleaner in the department, I'm still having a conversation. And I'm still talking to them, human being to human being.
It's so important. Anyone else?
If you don't, I'll start singing rugby songs. I'm just warning you.
No, I just want to say that I resonate with your story, because I've started with physical education and sport, and I went through Chinese medicine. Now I'm doing life coaching, and sometimes I think, who wants to hire someone that knows everything, master of all,
Jack
of all trades,
master of none.
and well, I'm freeing myself from that, but still, I think normally you get the expert. So this is when you said that you have a portfolio of that, so somehow it resonated with me.
Yeah.
How do you pass the message outside? How do you make?
There's things that and again, this is me. This is by no means a blueprint. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, of course.
Though Donald Trump comes to me for advice. Same name. I wouldn't talk about the acupuncture or the bowing or any of that, or the martial arts. Though if I thought it clinched the deal, I might put an arm lock on. No. I would just talk about the coaching side. I mean, it's not about me. It's about them. It's about what they need. So I wouldn't really mention all that, because people have said that before, but who masters anything? Ours is a journey. And the whole thing about portfolio lifestyle, and Jackie's just doing it right now, we were having a conversation beforehand, it's bits coming in and out. It's not like that's it. So if I'm going in, I'm talking as a coach. And I would just leave it at that initially. Because I wouldn't want to make it any more complex than it has to be. So like my LinkedIn page, I tend to keep it very business-like, because one of the things they will do is look you up. So then they know. I have another LinkedIn page, but that's called Dom the Death Destroyer. Doesn't have my last name. But no, I try and keep that quite clean. Okay. Does that kind of answer your question?
I think the other thing I'd say there is you probably think more about yourself than other people do.
Yeah.
And it's to recognise that what you think of yourself, somebody probably hasn't even thought of and isn't interested in. To be aware of the limits that you're placing on yourself that somebody just wouldn't even occur to them.
Beliefs, not good enough.
Yeah. Been there, done that. And I think we all do. We all go through these phases of we do things and we think we're not good enough. We think somebody else is better than we are. And it can stop you. It can frighten you from actually beginning something. But then if you see, excuse me, it's my turn.
It's your business. You carry on.
Just make it a gobby meal. It's so unusual, isn't it?
I'm hurt now.
Right. I forgot what I was talking about.
You see?
Therefore,
Odd that.
if you go in and you're just yourself, everything always works out, whether it works out the way you want it to or not. My business is, and I was laughing at Maureen about, sort of the snazzy website, etc. When I came across the principles, I took my business websites off of the internet because I thought I haven't a clue what these businesses are about. Have not got a clue. And I kept my websites off the internet for years. And I was working away and I was earning money and I was doing really, really well, and I thought, oh dear. So I put my website back up again, but my website doesn't actually relate to anything I'm doing, and I'm in the middle of rebranding it. But it hasn't stopped me gaining contracts with organisations, having meetings in the Scottish Parliament, delivering trainings in the corporate sector, doing coaching. That website is not me. My brand, me. I'm my brand. Me. Not a business card, not a logo, not a website. And if you're hiding behind your computer, nobody's going to feel the essence of who you are. Nobody. So it's realising, yeah, I feel a bit scared. This feels a bit uncomfortable. And I always know that when I feel uncomfortable, I'm about to learn something new. So it doesn't frighten me. Even if it's, what I'm learning is this isn't an organisation I should be speaking to. That's okay. Because I'm not attached to it. I'm not going in and speaking to companies and people wanting to get something from them. I'm not expecting to get a contract. I'm not expecting them to take me on. I'm going in as this playful kind of adventure to find out, do they suit me as much as I suit them to work together? Because I don't take all the business that comes my way either. If it doesn't feel right, I don't do it. It's trusting that in yourself and having the courage to walk away, because if you're feeling that somebody's going to give you a hard time, by God, they're going to give you a hard time when you start working with them. And there's people nodding, so I take it everybody's experienced that. Yeah.
Have you always been like that? Have you always been able to reject the ones that you feel in your gut that aren't going to work for you? Or has that come with a kind of success to some level where you're able to sort of survive financially to be able to make those decisions? Or have you been brave enough to just kind of go, I'm not taking that one?
Once I came across the principles, brave enough to do it because I knew something else would come along. Absolutely. Because I'd been in that situation before, not knowing the principles and taking things because I felt I had to financially. Whereas now, it's not that I don't have to financially, I choose not to. Because if I fill my life up with something, then I'm not leaving space for the thing that I really want to do, or the job that I'm meant to have. And that doesn't mean, and a lot of people say, well, how do you know that next job's going to come? How do you know you're going to get that next contract? And I don't know, but I trust that it will. But I don't hide behind my computer waiting on it. I go out there and I make it happen. I go out and I have the conversations. I go out and I challenge myself. I make things happen. I love the phrase that that we talk about, do nothing. And when I first came across the principles, I actually thought that's what you did. You did nothing and everything would work out. It does not work like that. No, it really doesn't work like that. The do nothing is in our behaviour. Things change, our brains reorder. That's where the do nothing element of the understanding comes in. That things effortlessly change. But we have to show up. And it's in that showing up that things start to move. It's like we're stirring up the pot. If you're not stirring up the pot, nothing comes at all.
I'd also question that feeling. Because sometimes when I have fear about something, it's not always the thing. So you've all heard the phrase, feel the fear and do it anyway. Well, I think there's a truth to that. Some of the things I've done, some in my life, not just in the business world, I didn't like the idea of doing it. At one stage I did, don't get me wrong, and then things changed. But I did it anyway.
Because you were fearful, or you didn't like the idea?
Well, I did it because that's what I was going to do. And I wasn't going to let the fear get in the way. And the only thing I can say is, I am one judgmental individual. But I am 100% of the time wrong. So if I've got a lot of anxiety about something, I mean, there's all these good phrases about what anxiety is and all the rest of that, but for me, it comes down to this. It's just my thinking about potential in the future. And we know from the principles, when we get in an anxious state, how does our thinking turn out? Does it ever turn out rosy? So sometimes you've just got to say, you know what? I'm feeling a bit anxious about this, so we'll find out then, won't we?
Mm-hmm. And it's noticing where your state of mind is in that moment that you're feeling that. Are you in a low state of mind? Are you in a clear state of mind? Because that's the other part of your instrument system that alerts you to what's going on. If you're in a low state of mind, you're apt to take things more seriously. The thoughts in the moment. Whereas if you're in a clearer, a higher state of mind, you're more playful with them.
I am struggling with that, as far as my feelings being a barometer, sort of like the anxiety telling me, okay, so your thinking's off, so don't make a decision in this state, as opposed to in contrast with, okay, so it's just anxiety, you know what, I could just do it anyway. And and that kind of makes sense more to sort of judge the mood that you're in.
Judge the mood that you're in.
Mm.
My youngest daughter, Lauren's just started university. She's studying politics. I do not know where she got that from. And she, so she's gone into a new flat. She's got new flatmates. She's balancing her budget. She's got a job, and life's busy. And I was speaking to her one night, and I said, "How are you?" She says, "I'm great during the day, Mum, but see at night time, I just get these strange thoughts coming into my head, and I get into a really, really, really low mood." And I just said, "You're just tired, hun. That's all it is. See how you are the next day." And we had a couple of those conversations, and now she's stopped partying as much. So she's got a clearer state of mind, she's not as tired, and she's recognised that when she is tired or hungry, her state of mind just plummets. And she takes these moods as being gospel, rather than it's just a state of mind and it's part of being human, it's completely normal. But you think how many kids go to university and they take that as being very, very serious. That's where we end up with problems with our youth that are away from home. Anyway, you were going to ask a question?
Yes, just first of all, I haven't read about the three principles. The beginning I felt I don't know what you're talking about.
It's
and
okay,
it doesn't matter, but it's just so wonderful that we just understand each other. And just to get back to this point and Marco's question, how to grow a business, and I think we changed the topic, but it's important how much you believe in yourself and how much you love yourself.
Yes.
Because when you have found out who you are and what do you want, then you can bring out the talent from you, and then you have this inner trust and inner strength that whatever I do, it's just good, and that's what people can feel, and that's how you attract them. And it's my experience in my life, what you just mentioned, not to worry about things or to take the work what you really don't need, and your rest or free time much more important. It works so well. I'm a yoga teacher and massage therapist, and each time when I feel I'm tired, I can say no. I can cancel my appointments because I know I can't help that much. But each time it comes back when I'm in a good mood and full of energy. And it's so wonderful that in the universe, a friend of mine told me, Anita, when you treat yourself well, the whole universe will support you in that. And I think that's what a key point, or what we have to understand, that you love yourself and everything for you, and in business as well. If you know you're doing right and you love what you do, there will be a good result. Thank you.
Thank you. That's lovely. I think it's also important to understand that as human beings we have natural periods in our life of expansion and natural periods in our life where there's contraction. And what I mean by that is there are times we will become very quiet and we don't want to do very much and we want to come inward looking. And there are times in our life where there are these periods of expansion, and that's when you're out there and you're making things happen. And I see that it's like the ebb and flow of a tide. We rest, we learn, we go out. So it's just expanding on your point. We rest, we learn, we share. We rest, we learn, we share. And every time we do that, we're nourishing ourselves and we're teaching what we've learned, rather than always pushing ourselves and pushing ourselves. So taking jobs that don't nourish us just makes you busy-minded. Is there any other questions?
One thing to add to what you said though as well is there is an ebb and flow, that life is constant change. We know that. And we know that about our consciousness as well. It goes up and down sometimes. But I think it's important not to make too much of it. It just seems to me like the thing with life is to take the next step. And if you're waiting to get that perfect feeling to do something, you could be waiting a while. So it's actually just, sometimes it's okay to make a mistake. It's you might take a lot on a job and you might think, well, this isn't working for me, this isn't right. Don't make that a big thing. In the business world, one of the biggest problems I've seen is that everyone's got to be right all the time. They spend a lot of time telling everyone how right they are. Initially they don't believe that, but after a while they've been glugging their own Kool-Aid. And then what they start to do is they start to hide things. They start to cover their tracks. I mean, we saw that with the financial crisis, didn't we? I mean, that's a big scale thing. But it happens in a smaller way. And, the principles allow us to have an eye for ourselves on that, because we get to rewrite the page every day. So I could go out and go into a business situation and it may not go well that day. That has no bearing on how it goes the next day. And it's the letting things go, knowing that things they do ebb and flow, they do change. But maybe it's just where I am. If I'm in a contract with you to be at your workplace tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll be there. I may not be in the best mood, I may not be, but I'll be there. Because I've noticed also that I may start the day and I'm feeling pretty rotten, but by lunchtime I'm feeling great. So I'm not going to, it's letting go of myself, getting over myself, and knowing that everything does, like Jacquie said, there is times to rest, there is times to share, but in the day-to-day doing, sometimes you've just got to just take the next step, because we don't know how it's going to be. Does that kind of make sense as well?
Yeah.
Yes, Don.
Right.
No, go back.
So what I'm sort of getting from this is, your ability to teach and the way you're sharing it is because it's impersonal. Whereas, because if you take it personally, then what you're trying to sell is you, and then there becomes a fear of failure. And when you're getting into the businesses, we were just talking about the businesses, it's the people in the business because it's all success driven, that is a personal thing as well, and then there's a fear of failure that comes with that, and it's, I guess the trick, for want of a better word, is not taking it personally, isn't it?
I don't teach impersonally. I share me.
Right, okay.
I always share me. This understanding is about us sharing our experience of who we are and what we've seen. What anybody takes from that in a room is up to them. It's not a rejection of me if they don't understand what it is I'm sharing. I have shared stories about one of my favourite stories, and some of you have heard this in the room. I was in a room with a whole group of CEOs, and we were talking about the nature of thought, and I started to talk to them about compelling thought, and I told them a story about me. We used to have 2 little dogs, and I would take the dogs out for a walk every morning, and the dogs would do their business, and I would pick up the dog's poo and I'd put it in a wee poo bag, and every time I passed a post box I wanted to post the poo. Every morning. I had those dogs for years and years and years, and it never ever went away. I just always wanted to.
So did you do it?
No, I didn't. And even if I did, it's illegal, so I'm never going to admit it. But in that sharing of what could be conceived as she's off her head, she wanted to post her dog poo, they started to share other compelling thoughts that they had had that they wouldn't have shared otherwise. So the more we share from our humanness, which is personal, the more we encourage others to do the same. I think what Dawn was referring to earlier, and is maybe sort of my fault too, is that it's the gaining the business that's impersonal. Not the sharing of this understanding, but gaining the business, going for the contract, that's impersonal. That we're not attached to, whether we get it or we don't get it. That's impersonal. But I think to be really successful, working anywhere with this understanding, you have to share you.
If you don't, that's what I did the first time. You know, that time they cancelled me. Because I went in and I just started talking like it was some sort of technique, and they weren't having it. Because if you present the 3 principles like that, it does look pretty rubbish. Yeah. It does look pretty rubbish. It's all about talking to people and pointing them back at themselves through your stories. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's if you like, that's on the shop floor. Until that time, you don't make it about you. You don't, you know. Of course, when you get in to meet people, you're having a conversation with them, and yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
I always share me. It's all I've got. It's all any of us have got.
You've got dog food as well.
No, I don't have that now. Posted it.
I wondered where that came from. One last thing I would say. To something I think it was you mentioned about being good enough. That's interesting, isn't it? Because what is good enough? When is good enough? If we're waiting to be good enough, we are really going to be waiting a long time, aren't we? Because that's a bar we'll just keep raising. So sometimes you've got to go in here, and I'm not saying there is no level of good enough, because there is, but we don't know what it is, and we don't know that we don't already have it inside of us. And sometimes the only way you find out is by finding out.
Can I quickly point you in the direction of something? We were speaking about business, and as Dawn said earlier, and I mentioned as well, stress and anxiety are one of the things in business that most people are interested in. This coming Tuesday, there is a 3PGC webinar. It's a free webinar if you register for it. It's 3pgc.org. And Dr. Joe Bailey is going to be speaking on this webinar. Joe's doing some groundbreaking work at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona on stress and anxiety and burnout. And at the midpoint on their research, they've got some pretty phenomenal results, like a 65% reduction in stress and anxiety, 75% reduction in rumination, which is, you know, people going over and over and over things in their heads. The Mayo Clinic will publish this data next year, and it'll be in a peer-reviewed journal. There's going to be data coming out, so I recommend that you go and have a wee watch of that video. Next Tuesday, the 22nd on the 3PGC, I think it's at 5 o'clock UK time. I presented some of this data at the Scottish Parliament, and it sort of blew, you know, sort of the Royal Colleges of Nurses and the BME were just so excited about it, because that is a huge thing at the moment. So, just point you in that direction. Thank you.
Anyone else?